Gail is the Director of Care Management at ELDERCARE Management. She began her career in aging services in 1998, serving as a family consultant for a local placement agency. She actively educated and guided a generation of seniors and their families to resources and information available throughout the greater Sacramento region. In 2010, she brought her experience and expertise to the team at ELDERCARE Management, providing service and oversight in the growing field of geriatric care management. In 2020, Gail assumed the role of Director of Care Management for ELDERCARE Management, leading the exceptional team of established care managers. Gail received a Bachelor of Science in History from UCLA, a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from CSU Northridge, completed a graduate certification program in gerontology through CSU Sacramento, where she concurrently completed a 6-class case management course certification. Gail is a California Residential Care Facilities for the Elderly, RCFE, certified administrator, and is a state-approved instructor for RCFE administrators certification courses. Additionally, she's a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association and a board member for Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center. Gail is a certified care manager through the National Academy of Certified Care Managers and a member of the Aging Life Care Association. Gail offers invaluable wisdom on the subject of aging, and we appreciate her sharing that information with us today. Gail?
Thank you so much, Maureen. I greatly appreciate the introduction, and thank you to Del Oro for this opportunity to talk a little bit about the complexities of modern day families. I think they're broad and deep and wonderful in many ways, but certainly worthy of maybe some discussion on how to manage, how to tackle, how to share the wealth and share the assignments as we all go about the many responsibilities that we have with our family members, both young and old. I don't think this is at all exclusive to our senior population. We've certainly geared it toward that today, but applies to, just how we go about approaching this joy that we consider our families. And we are complex. And that's what makes us wonderful, I think, in many ways. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to tackle these challenges day in and day out. And this is a long journey, and with no real clear playbook or I wish I could tell you that I had a crystal ball and I could give you all the answers and we could look forward and we can all settle in and just ride the wave as it might be. But I do not have that crystal ball. I apologize. But what I do have, I think, are some good, sensible tips as to how to focus on getting through, keeping everybody as content and peaceful as possible in this modern day when we have all kinds of challenges coming our way. So let's start with just a couple of thoughts here. As you can see on the screen, more than 7 million people in the US live at least 1 hour away from the person for whom they provide that primary care. And we've had clients in a plethora of categories in regards to location, etc., to the one that they have those responsibilities for. And no matter whether it's 1 hour or 10 hours, it adds an additional chore, an additional element to this idea of I have to be available to my charge, but I also have responsibilities here in my own location. We have working individuals, we have sandwich generation individuals, we have people with extreme needs, they have neighbors they're helping, church members they're helping, and it makes us feel connected to the world to help and to assist, but too much and too much strain can make that challenge really overwhelming. So we also have some clients who are actually local. The family lives right here, but we are that backup to them. Sometimes we're just simply a sounding board. I have a lot of only children who are trying to navigate for mom and dad, or mom or dad. And they really just want someone, am I doing this right? Are there other resources, etc.? So no matter what the miles are, be they 0, be they 1,000, 2,000, it adds an element to this challenge that we have of taking care of those we love and those we're charged with that makes it just a little bit overwhelming at times and challenging. We have some ideas on maybe how to get around that, how to share the wealth, how to approach it in a sensible, hopefully calm fashion as it might be. So when we talk about care, what in particular are we, discussing? We're talking about, literally help with physical activity. As we get older, we do slow down, and I'm on that older train. I will honestly and proudly admit that I'm on that older train. And so I understand I do not do things as well physically as I did when I was 25. So I need a good night's sleep. I need a bit of nutrition. I need a lot of things that I could maybe skip or bypass when I was a bit younger. I can't do that as readily. So how do we get that assistance with some of those physical activities that our responsible party presents to us and shows that they need assistance with? We are huge and really encouraging in regards to home safety planning. Taking a look at the home to see how realistic it is to serve us as we age is a really critical and important element of making sure that we are doing all we can for the ones that we are charged with. We are happy to come out and do simply a home care safety assessment and give you a sense of concerns that we see and how to mitigate those concerns. So, again, we think, I live in a one-story home, and I bought this home about 10 years ago, thinking I'm going to be able to stay there forever. Well, I already have identified, just by the nature of seeing a lot of different homes and helping families, I've identified a few little glitches that I might have as well. How do you get a ramp in place? How do you mitigate a lip on a shower? Is there a bathroom on the first floor? Where is the bedroom? And so many individuals feel, but my bedroom's upstairs, I need to go upstairs. Now, even though the master or the primary bedroom is upstairs, is there somewhere downstairs that you can utilize when and if there is a safety issue on board? We are happy to come and talk with you about that. This is a great delegation of duties. You may assign this to a family member to help research, problem solve, and mitigate some of those safety issues in the home. I think one of the biggest issues that we need to do is to identify what the actual needs are. We had a client this past weekend go down from an unfortunate, unplanned, or any of them planned, I hope not, fall. And she had really been doing quite well at home prior to this fall, went to the hospital, was fully evaluated, no obvious concerns, but it generally weakened by this activity. So we had to very quickly identify the new needs, adjust the support for her, and ultimately we are hoping by the end of the week that we'll reevaluate the needs and be able to pull back some of the supportive measures that we've put into place. But it's a constant, you don't just identify needs one day, it's a constant motion that goes, because again, we're continuing to progress down that scale of needs, as it might be. So a continual refresh on identifying what those needs are. One of the things that we're really proud of and pleased to offer as part of one of our efforts is to come out and to, again, do this safety assessment, talk with you about what the concerns might be, identify what the needs are. And we try to look a little bit in advance. We try to look down the road just a little bit to identify those needs. Sometimes it's nice to identify what might be coming so you can do a little preparatory work in regards to getting those resources garnered. And speaking of resources, so important to locate what's local. What are the resources in our community? And again, I think that's something that we pride ourselves on. One of the things that we can really help you with is finding the needle in the haystack, because it is somewhat a journey like that. What may be offered in your own community as a long distance or removed caregiver might not be offered in our community. So awfully nice to cut to the chase, locate those resources that are going to work to support your loved one as they again, go through this aging journey. Absolutely need good, consistent medical oversight, relationships with doctors, and good ability to communicate with doctors. I think, as we all know, as we age, we don't just necessarily age singularly with just a primary care physician. We tend to have all the ologists, neurologists, urologists, cardiologists. We tend to see those come into our lives as we age. So again, determining what the medical oversight is and assigning that perhaps to a family member, divvying up those tasks and trying to assign tasks accordingly. And then a good understanding of the financial support, the management of finances, the legal house, all of the finite elements of those issues. What do things cost, and what are the realities of what is affordable for the budget of the loved one that you're advocating for? So CARE has a broad stroke coverage, and it is good to have a sense of what each and every area of concern might be. It may be nice to go through a checklist and realize we're covered here, we're not covered in this capacity, and dive into the research of covering that secondary capacity. So this is one of my favorite quotes, and I think there's so much in this to really contemplate. You must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be. And as we age, change is so very challenging. So we're asking a senior who may not be feeling horrendously well and may have some real fatigue and concerns and worries to rethink a way to be cared for. I hearken to the idea that when we're born, we from the minute we are born, we are striving for independence, and we spend decades in our lives fine-tuning that independence. And then all of a sudden, we hit a stumbling block and we hit those senior years, and we now need to be a little dependent. And so we have to switch our thinking that to recognize that dependency is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of admitting that I need some assistance. Let's get that assistance in place, and then I can continue on with the things I love. So we're constantly in this rethinking mode. And this can be very challenging for our loved ones, definitely. Challenging for us too, but we have to rethink our approach from time to time. So we are really fond of the family meeting approach. Really helpful to get everybody on the same page. And be reminded that, when you have a large contingent of siblings, it's going to be hard to get consensus, most definitely. There are 5 siblings in my family. I am fortunate enough to be surrounded by 2 older brothers and 2 younger brothers. And we had to get 5 of us to really get on the same page when we began to talk about the support for mom and dad, and then subsequently just mom when dad was gone. So a family meeting sometimes can clear the air and can really set up some goals, objectives, and boundaries. Really important to set up those boundaries. It establishes communication right from the get-go, and who is going to be the lead in that communication. Oftentimes when we work with families, our preference is to have one communication focal point and ask that individual to disseminate the information that was shared. I'm happy in an email fashion to add email addresses, but verbal communication, updates, and emergency contact, I like to have one initial established communication line of chain there, so that I can make sure that I am communicating concisely, directly with the responsible individual who's been designated for that communication. I think the second bullet point here is really a critical element as you sit and talk and make these family meeting preparations. I think we have to look at each and one of us strengths and weaknesses within that family dynamic. And then those traditional family roles are really important. And I'll share with you briefly a story. I know as we were sitting down with my brothers and my father had passed and we were talking about what should we do for mom, my very dear, sweet younger brother kept piping up and, maybe we should try this and maybe we should try that. And I think every one of us looked at him continually and said, what would you know? You're the baby of the family. We've got this. Well, yeah, he was the baby of the family at a ripe old 45 years of age. And he had a thought or two, but we dismissed him so quickly that, as the baby of the family, he might not have anything to offer. He had a lot to offer. So let's recognize strengths, weaknesses, birth order, and those traditional family roles. If you have someone on your team who's really financial, it may be nice to identify and divvy up those financial tasks for them. If you have someone who's really a good communicator and mom and or dad or aunt or uncle seems to listen to, then let's divide that task and carry that task over to the one who can get through and deliver a message and it tends to get heard. So identifying and divvying up different tasks is a very beneficial element to a family meeting and addressing some of the concerns as you discuss things. Really important to work to our strengths. Everybody then has a role, feels their importance, feels like they're contributing, and it tends to go a little easier in that regard. I often get the question, do we include mom and dad or the loved one we're advocating for? I'm going to tell you that is, you are the historians with your family members or your responsible individuals. So your historical perspective is invaluable. So speak and speak to that history and make that known. On a first blush, I tend not to include the loved ones until we really have a set approach. We've worked through some of the concerns. We've been able to verbalize some of the angst, calm the players, because you don't want to present in anything other than a very unified approach to this. So including loved ones, informing them, engaging them, I think is really critical, but you have to do it with some good strategy in mind. At some point, if it becomes far more heated than you wish, far more uncomfortable than you wish, we would recommend perhaps a neutral party or a mediator. Some of you may feel, gosh, I can sit down and talk to my siblings. I've had the joy a couple of times. I've had one family with 9 children. I've had another family with 11 children. Very hard to get consensus under that, guys. And so I ended up being the mediator as a neutral party, no vested interest in this outcome, but able to garner the respect and the attention of those siblings, and then go from there to present my oversight, my thoughts on the concerns and the issues addressing their parents. There are also professional mediators, and I've had a time or two where I have had to say to the family, you're outside my toolbox. We need to get you a professional mediator. So that may be really a critical element in making some progress on getting consensus if it's possible, or agreeing that we don't agree, and then how to set boundaries from that point on. I think if you get nothing out of today, I'd really like you to get the final bullet point on this screen that says, don't overcommit and underdeliver to your loved ones. I really encourage you not to make categoric, strong statements such as, Mom, I'll never abandon you. Mom, I'll be here every day for the rest of your life. Mom, we'll never place you in a facility. We don't know what the future brings. We don't know what's best for everyone in this scenario. So when we overcommit and underdeliver, we lose the trust and the faith. So we're going to talk a lot about how to acknowledge that there are worries and concerns, and then how to address how we're going to commit to those. And again, I just really encourage you to be very cautious and very calculated with your words. your loved ones are hanging on those words, and they want to make sure that you meet your commitment. The good of one, I'm a firm believer in the good of one does not outweigh the good of many. This is a balancing act, and this is so very difficult. I also find myself falling back on the comment that I hope we've had a lifetime of what we want, but in the end, at the close of life, we get what we need. And sometimes the bargaining between want and need is a very tough bargain. So we want to help you as you approach that. You can see a family meeting can be held in a variety of manners: in-person, Zoom, Skype, FaceTime. I've done agendas. I've done them without agendas. Again, I think we just have to find the comfortable zone for everyone to feel as if they can speak to their concerns. We can find agreement and consensus and collaboration, and then share that with the loved one that you're advocating for. That's a good way to start, to prep for a meeting, to conduct that meeting, and then to have an end result to that meeting. So here are some of your first steps, I think, in figuring out where do we go from here. It's very beneficial to stop by and talk to your loved ones. Find out what your loved ones want. Don't speak for them. Don't look through your eyes as to what you want. Look through their eyes as to what they might be seeing, feeling, and contemplating. Talk about what they want. You can talk with them and listen to their wishes without making a commitment. You may want to take some notes as you talk with them, but talking to them and truly showing some active listening may go a long way in trying to establish, again, that trust that we're going to together, we're going to solve these concerns and problems. We are very supportive and really encourage you to seek support. Seeking support does not mean that you are weak or incapable. It means you are wise and willing to realize, I need help. This is one of my shortcomings. I have a disabled daughter at home, and I tend to be one who doesn't ask often enough for help. I'm learning, but I am only as good to her as I am good to myself. I cannot help her if I do not help myself, so sometimes I need to seek help. We find there are two general categories of help or support. There's the informal mechanism. These are neighbors, friends, church members, family members from afar. Be reminded too, the family members who live the furthest tend to think they know the most. So if someone's living afar and they're telling you you're just not doing a good enough job, ask them to switch places for you for 1 week and let them get a dose of what it is that you do. Now, again, further away, you get a glossier, prettier picture of the circumstance. The closer you are, the more you are in the thick of it. Your neighbors, your friends, your informal caregivers, your church friends, they all have excellent intentions, but they may not be able to meet the needs in a specific and very defined manner. Sure, I'll help you out next Tuesday, and come to find out next Tuesday morning, they phone you and say, oh, my daughter can't get off work and my granddaughter needs to go to her piano lesson, so I can't help you today. Really good intentions, just a better offer and more responsibility came their way, so they unfortunately had to back out of their commitment. Wonderful to utilize informal, again, mechanisms. You just don't want to dry that well up too quickly. So we always encourage families to have formal mechanisms for support. These are the professionals, these are the organizations, these are the locations. If you have the professionals in your back pocket as well, you will have the assurity that the professionals will show up. This is a job now. They have a requirement to show up and fill that coverage as you've requested it. That is their job. There should be no gaps in that opportunity. Organizations, locations, settings, etc. By figuring out and figuring out where those exist in your community, and combining your informal and your formal support systems, you will have your bases much better covered. I think it's important to conduct an assessment, as we mentioned, maximizing the safety and the true reality of who is independent and who isn't. Again, we spend that lifetime trying to strive for that independence, but are we really independent when we can't get to the bathroom without some assistance, when we are not sleeping through the night due to waking, when we are not able to fix a meal and we end up dehydrated? Now, again, by doing this assessment, you get a good sense of that progression and what will maximize their safety and their independence, and then what will lead you to the dependence and seeking that support as it might be. It's always nice to have a professional give you a second opinion, from a professional from a caregiving agency, a professional from a durable medical equipment organization, a professional who does adaptations to the home. Always good to get an assessment. Doesn't mean you have to go forward with it, but how do you mitigate the challenges that are present in your environment and make this so it's a safe and a clean setting for someone to continue aging and in place. Might be nice to divvy up a task again, if we've got individuals who are not maybe perhaps local, or we've got a local individual and they want to take on the doctor role, interacting with the doctor's role, while a sibling or another adult or responsible party living 500 miles away is a finance person, they can take on the long-term care policy or the financial advisor or getting their bills online and pay them on automatic pay. But someone should be present and available to work with the doctor. We encourage individuals to stop by the office of the doctors. Introduce yourself to staff. It's important that they know who you are, and it's important that you know who they are. You want to exchange contact information. I'm forever pulling doctor's cards when I go to doctor visits with my clients. But at the same time, I'm handing the front desk or the office manager my card so that if there is a concern that they can also get back in touch with me. So making sure that we have this good exchange of information is important. It's always nice to get to know who is the person. You don't really get much luck getting directly to the doctor, but there's always an opportunity to meet the office staff and make sure that if something needs to go in quickly and you've sent a message through the portal to the doctor and you're not getting a response, who on staff do you want to bypass that technology approach and get to them personally, just to see if you can get them to open the email and respond to your concern. If you are power of attorney, or POA as it shows there, and be reminded that there's power of attorney for medical, there's power of attorney for financial. If you are power of attorney, very important to present your paperwork, copies of your paperwork, to the doctor's office. By nature of being power of attorney, it doesn't mean that you get to necessarily make decisions for your loved ones, but what it does give you is the opportunity to interact and hear from the doctor's office the concerns, the results, the discussions that have occurred between your loved one and the doctor. So the power of attorney document is a very important one and key to get into the hands of the medical delivery system that you work with and the individual doctors that your loved one is seeing. I think it's very wise to attend an appointment. I did that yesterday 3 different times. I was simply a scribe in the doctor's office with 3 different appointments, just listening, because when we go to see a doc, we already have that anxiety of what's going to be discussed and how we're going to get all this information exchanged and what they're going to say. A second set of ears is so nice to help take that information down. Then you would have the chance to sit down with your loved one or your responsible party and talk about what you heard, what you wrote down, and what was exchanged in that meeting. So schedule and attend that appointment. That doctor sees you present and then has, again, a better sense of who this individual is. When I attend an appointment also, just prior to going in, I like to ask my client, Do you have any questions? Can I write those down for you so we don't miss them? You'll probably remember them, but if I write them down, I'll check them off as they get asked, and we won't miss anything that you want covered. So again, attending that appointment can be very supportive and very helpful, and relieve some concern and stress for your loved one. And make sure all paperwork all necessary paperwork is completed. Some offices will speak to you wide open and freely. Other offices want signed releases from you, from the client or the patient that the doctor is seeing. They want copies of, if there's a conservatorship, they want copies of a conservatorship, they want copies of the power of attorney, etc. So get that paperwork completed and get that in the hands of the doctor that you're working with. Technology can be our friend. It's my nemesis, I'm quite certain of that, but I'm learning and I'm working through that. So use technology, not only with your doctors, but with your loved one as well. If they're able to help and assist with that and can manage that, fantastic. There's email, there's scanning of documents, faxing documents, etc. So use that technology to your advantage to be in touch with the responsible parties, to be in touch with one another, and also to have that information as you need it at your disposal as far as resources going forward when status changes and you have to move forward. On my cell phone, as an example, I keep, on a HIPAA protected application, I keep copies of my clients' important documents. If you are the responsible party, I would keep a copy of the post that, and the power of attorney that you're responsible for, or the advanced healthcare directive that you're responsible for regarding that loved one. You never know when you may have to turn to that. So using technology can be very, very important. Emergency pendants can be a wonderful lifeline to staying independent. I will again pick on my own family. When my mother was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer and we knew that she was not as strong as she used to be, yet we hadn't needed to bring in 24-hour care quite yet. We made sure that mom had an emergency pendant and that it was on her at all times. I used a little leverage of, Mom, I live so many miles away from you, and while I know you don't need this, I need you to need this. It's your independence. And she seemed to follow that logic. There are a plethora of different options in regards to emergency pendants. Some as simple as, push the button, they come over the intercom and they just ask you questions and check and make sure that you're okay. Others get very, very complicated, very involved with GPS tracking, etc. This again is that opportunity to have some technology in place and to have a sense of security, as it might be, without someone sitting in the home 24/7. So really encourage you again in your community to track down and get some information on those emergency pendants with a goal of keeping them safe and sound, and you feeling like there's a little bit of oversight, as it might be. Lots of medication options in regards to medication trays and systems that do reminders, pill packs that can be sent, etc. Lots of ways, again, long distance, that someone can do some research to see how are we going to get those medications on a regular basis to our loved ones. Lots of systems that will sound off bells and alarms and even say your name. Hi, Gail, it's 8 a.m., time to take your morning meds. Again, using technology for these types of things can eliminate the need for the human interaction, which can be costly, and also cover the bases for the needs that might be. I'm big on that human interaction. I think that's an important thing. But when we can substitute that appropriately with technology, that's not a bad thing. There can be reminder calls. There are wake-up calls that organizations and communities dial out to talk with families, etc. You may have a system that works, in your neighborhood. I know one of my clients There's a neighbor who lives directly across the street. She gets up every morning. The first thing she does is she goes out and looks to make sure that her neighbor across the way has her blinds open. If her blinds are not open by 9 a.m., the neighbor across the street has the right to go knock on the door and check in. That's a pretty old-fashioned way to do things, but again, it can be a really effective way. So it would really eliminate any concerns, etc. And of course, we have Zoom and Skype and FaceTime and Alexa and any number of technology issues. These can be tough things for our seniors to learn, so we want to keep it simple and feasible for them to be successful. But again, use technology to your advantage the best way that you can. And hopefully you've got someone in your cohort that has that technology skill. Assign them to these duties accordingly. We feel really, delighted to remind you that you can get a lot of support from local care managers such as ourselves. If you're listening from a long distance and you're interested in what a care manager might be all about, there is a website, there's an organization with a website. It is the Aging Life Care Association. We are members. We have that information if you're interested in it, and we're very happy to share that with you. These individuals are skilled and they are vetted. They know the local resources. They will communicate with you and be a plethora of support mechanisms for you in many ways to navigate this caregiving as it might be. Mediation services, neutrality, really good professionals. Really encourage you to look into that if you are looking for some support locally. So what is in your toolbox? That's a really important element. You want to establish relationships with local providers as quickly as possible. And even if you don't need them at the moment, having them in your grasp is a really valuable investment of time. I will tell you that we spend a tremendous amount of our time as care managers resolving crisis because families didn't have the time, didn't have the inclination or the knowledge to dive in and discover what they might need, who the local providers are, how much they cost, how do you activate them. And so we tend to be doing things reactively versus proactively. I really encourage you to be proactive, and I'm thrilled if you get to tuck all that away and put it away and then only refer to it when you're in the midst of a concern. We talk often about crisis, and I will tell you that I think the bulk of us spent 2020 in a crisis, that being the pandemic. So our hands were tied to a certain extent already, and then we had additional crises on top of that, such as a broken hip and a need to be in a hospital, and where do you go from there, and what facilities are open, and who does rehab, and who can come into your home, and who can't. Doing a little bit of that legwork ahead of time really gives you an opportunity to manage well. You make better choices when educated and when not in crisis. Create a very specific network that speaks to your situation. And again, just tucking that away, finding out who does adaptations in the home, finding out how meals get delivered, what's transportation look like in your community, who are the caregivers, what does your church offer, where are the professional caregiving agencies, where are the Del Oros and the Alzheimer's associations in your communities, etc. Getting an understanding of the support mechanisms and the network you want to create specific to your situation is, again, a proactive step and a really good step in making sure that you manage well throughout this entire aging journey. And a good understanding of the cost of services. Who pays for what? What is covered? What isn't covered? What does Medicare cover? What does the government cover? Etc. Getting a good understanding. I can speak to California and California exclusively, but if you're out of the area, I can find you someone in your state who will tell you a little bit about any differentials in the care and the services provided in those states. You will be amazed at what is covered and what isn't, and what role you will play or your loved one's dollars will play in making sure that they stay safely wherever it is that they choose to stay. So stay informed and support it by doing things such as the community education that you're doing now. I applaud each and every one of you for being on board today and just taking this in an attempt to be prepared and to really get educated on how things work in your world and what your next steps might be. I love having plan A, plan B, and even plan C. We don't know where things are going. All the better to cover it in a broad scope rather than just, oh no, mom's going to stay at home. We got that covered. Well, do you know what that costs? Do you know that caregivers are hard to find at this moment? They're in strong demand, etc. So again, community education and just informing yourself on what options are available is really important. Stay connected. You're not alone. You may feel very alone in this transaction, but boy, you are not. I promise you, you are not alone. There are support groups. There are support groups online. There are families, family members that you can talk with. Again, you can get the alliance of a professional. As I mentioned at the onset, we talk with a lot of family members who just want to bounce ideas off of us, and we'll be painstakingly gentle yet honest. If we feel their plan doesn't have merit, I will talk about why I feel it doesn't have merit and how we can build it in a way that it would have the legs it needs to have to be successful. So stay connected and reach out to individuals. You may need some support in your own home. Your loved one may need some support at home. I think it's very important to have a clarification of what is feasible at home and what really is not feasible at home. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute with our next slide. Home modifications. How much trouble and modification do you want to go through to make this really helpful? I share another story with you. I had a client 3 years ago who really wanted to honor their mother's wishes of staying home and staying near family and being engaged. So, pardon me, this delightful couple went about, they had property, they went about building a lovely little granny flat or casita on their property for mom, and it was a good 8 months in totality in regards to getting it situated so that she could be on their property, available. They would be available to her at any turn. She moved in and 4 days later had a massive stroke, and they recognized, we can't do this. So again, how far can you go, should you go to make those modifications and those support systems so that it's feasible for a loved one to stay at home? And again, when does it cross a boundary of not being cost effective, emotionally effective, and work properly for the individual that you're advocating for? I know the lion's share of us say we want to stay home. Home is where our heart is. There are memories there, but sometimes, again, we have a lifetime of what we want, and at the end, we get what we need, and that's that tough bargaining. Taking a look at durable medical equipment and who supplies durable medical equipment. These items are things such as hospital beds, wheelchairs, bedside commode, transfer pole, walkers, wheelchairs, etc. Some of this equipment is provided by Medicare when written as an order for doctors. Some of this stuff is out of pocket. So again, getting a feel for what durable medical equipment is out there and what is going to be provided by Medicare, if anything, and what is going to be critical to allow your loved one to stay comfortably where they are. Doing a little homework there may be helpful. Sadly, I'll tell you that I have a daughter who's at home with me who's disabled, and we went to the durable medical equipment store the other day. She looked at me and said, gosh, I used to like to go to Macy's. Now I like to go here and see how I can help myself remain independent. Kind of a sad comment, but we giggled and laughed, and then we went to Macy's after that. So it works. So staying at home versus making a move. This is a really challenging one, folks. I mean, it's so very individualized. And I'm always really quite happy to talk with anybody about the pros and the cons and how we go about how do you make this decision. First and foremost, you do need to assess the current living situation. What's going on? What are the concerns? What are the challenges? We currently do some support and just listening for a family of a lovely couple. There are 8 adult children. Here's another large family. And the mom the other day looked at us and said, I gave birth and raised 8 children. I can help my husband. And my hat is off to her. That is such a resilient tone. What we had to say to her was, yes, you amazingly gave birth and raised 8 children when you were 25. You are now 85 and you are tired and you are exhausted and your husband is tired and he's exhausted. It's a little different than the historical view of giving birth and raising 8 children. Commend her wholeheartedly, but we have to be honest about what our abilities are at the current moment. We have to look at the financial situation. That is a huge component. What is feasible and what is not feasible to the pocketbook? There may be some feasibility to staying at home, but you have to know is it more cost effective for us to be looking at facility life, because that's what is affordable from the big picture. What are the available resources for staying home versus making a move? And again, this is where you've divvied up those tasks and you've looked at the financial component. You've got one of your responsible parties looking into those liquidating assets, what the values are here, there, and what their savings accounts are, if there's long-term care insurance, etc. Bottom line, this becomes a financial and a mathematical equation. What are the financial resources? What do things cost? And how long can we remain in the current circumstance that we're in? And where do we go when those finances become a major driving force? So you can see on this screen that, there's, if you stay at home, there's in-home care to consider, anywhere from an hour a day to 24 hours in a day. I will tell you, staying home with 24-hour round-the-clock care from an agency is probably the most expensive choice anyone can make. With an agency, the tab for a 24/7 round-the-clock caregiver would be upwards to $20,000 to $22,000 a month. That's pretty sobering. Not many of us can do that. And often I get the question, but Gail, we don't need anybody for 24 hours. We just need them for 4 hours. Okay, which 4 hours do you need? Well, I don't know. And then we try to determine when the 4 hours of safety would be best. And lo and behold, there's 20 other hours in a day. And what do we do about staffing and supporting and securing those hours? So staying at home takes some real deliberate thought. There may be some adult day healthcare or adult day centers that may be supported, where a loved one could go for a few hours during the day, to either get support and comfort and caregiving and to give you a respite. Those need to be looked at. There may be short in your community. You need to look at those locations and see if they're up and running. There may be some respite care, short-term care. You may engage in something. You don't have to do it for a lifetime. Maybe you just need 2 weeks of respite care to get some support and help, as it might be at home. There's meal and grocery deliver. There's transportation options to consider regarding staying home. So a plethora, it's feasible, it's doable, and we can help you plan it. But these are some of the criteria to consider when thinking, should we stay at home or should we make that move? As you can see, when you make a move, you are moving perhaps into independent living congregately with other seniors, but with some services. Perhaps you're looking at assisted living, where there's a social model of care, but a plethora of medical models that are offered as a supportive mechanism in assisted living. There may be a need to go to memory care. These are for our individuals who have memory issues and are better served in an exclusive memory environment where they have others who are in the same boat that they are in. There may be a need to go to skilled nursing, either for a long-term custodial stay or a rehabilitative stay. And there may be a need to go to a board and care, which is also assisted living, but in a small venue, a home-like environment, typically 6 residents. Much more intimate one-on-one care is available in this board and care. Talking through these options and better understanding these options will lead you to better decisions in the long run. So how do you do that talk? The talk is tough. Many times we're going to say, try to do it face-to-face. I think we lose, certainly on the phone, we lose body language, intonations, there's unheard messages or unintended messages, I should say. So a face-to-face, when we've done our homework, when we've done our research, when we've got a plan, a face-to-face talk may be your best approach. And maybe having that face-to-face talk with the one individual you've identified that your loved one is going to listen to. Sometimes we ask doctors to repeat the message we're giving our loved ones because our loved ones might listen to those doctors. But bottom line, your best bet is more of a face-to-face conversation. I implore you to listen. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Let's use them sometimes proportionately. Empathy and listening doesn't mean you agree. It just means you have some compassion and your loved one feels as if they have a voice. That's really important. I think it's critical also to be patient versus results oriented. Your first talk may not get you anywhere. Do we always have to win? Is there consolation? Is there collaboration? Again, a little bit of patience in listening to what your loved one's concerns are will go a long way. We want to respect as much privacy as possible, making sure that we're not overstepping the bounds. I remember my brother moved in with my mother at the end of life, and I said, you probably want someone to come and bathe Mom. Oh, no, I've got this. After the first bath, he called me and he said, I don't want to bathe Mom. No, can you get somebody? That's not the role I want with Mom. So yes, we were able to get somebody in to help him. He really wanted to help, but he wanted to respect some privacy boundaries. We find it's often helpful to lead with your efforts as you do the talk with your loved one. I remember going to my mom and saying, Mom, do you and Dad have a trust? Is that something I should do? Or Mom, here's what I did. How about, what did you do to get your ducks in a row? Again, leading with your effort takes down the pressure of putting them on the spot. You want to ask some probing questions of your loved one and settle in for the answer. Give them a chance to answer. They may shut you down right quickly. But if you don't ask and try to open that door, we're not going to make the progress. This is where, again, you may want to bring an intermediary in or a neutral party. And then again, you talk with your loved one about their assessment of the situation. I think 9 times out of 10, we're going to hear our senior loved one say, I'm fine, I've got this. And now we need to break down and clarify what we are concerned about that they don't have under control. Very carefully orchestrating that conversation as it might be. Again, this is the tough one. The talk can be the difficult one. Use those ears, dig deep for the patients, and if you need support, get a neutral party involved. That may help and provide some success. Make sure again that you have done your advanced planning, that you have powers of attorney in place for medical, for financial, that you've got advanced healthcare directives in place, and those are distributed to the responsible parties. You've talked with your financial advisor, you know what the financial situation is, that you've got legal documents in place. Again, this is a whole divvying out of a task that could be given to one of the family members to make them feel as if they have done and contributed when they can't be there in person. This is an excellent assignment for someone in the ranks, as it might be, to contribute to the planning and the discussion process with your loved one. It's always good to plan ahead. Oh boy, not always easy though. Again, just by nature of the fact that we talk about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But by nature of the fact that we don't talk about it, we are probably going to make crisis-driven decisions in a time when, and they will not be our best decision in a time when we need to be at our very best. So let's try to plan ahead. Open and honest conversations. No need to diminish anybody. Mom, no need to use language that says, Mom, you're just being so difficult. Mom, you're being awful. Mom, you're not listening. I'm picking on Mom today. I'm sorry. Let's pick on Dad for the rest of the presentation. Dad, you're just being difficult here. Dad, I'm trying to help. I need and want to help. This is not a safe situation. You've heard everybody's concerns. Let's talk about this. Trying again to be a bit patient and opening those ears and listening as best you can. Remember that end-of-life options should be discussed too. I think this is the gift we give our family members, is to talk about things, is to say, these are my wishes. This is what I want. There's no joy, there's no comfort in surprises and wondering, what does my loved one want? Oh, they're gone. I can't ask them any further. Let's have that conversation. Let's get the details in writing, and we'll set it aside. We'll put it aside for when the time comes, and when it's necessary to pull that information out, we'll pull that information out. So making sure that we understand what the end-of-life options wishes are, and then that the final arrangements are in place, is a gift your loved one gives to you. And that's the best presentation that you can give to them, is saying, Mom, Dad, I want to honor your wishes, but I don't know what your wishes are. They seem to be a bit of a mystery. Tell me what you want. I assure you I can make that happen for you. That's not over-promising and under-delivering. That's saying you'll be gone, and now it's my job fully to take over and make sure things happen as you so have desired them to happen. This is, again, one of the really wonderful statements I think I'd like you to walk away from, and this goes back to that over-committing and under-delivering. I think rather than making promises you have concerns you can't keep, it may be better to say to your loved one, at each and every turn in this journey of aging, together we will make the best decisions possible. And again, I remember, we don't want to make any promises we regret. I remember saying to my mom, Mom, I understand you want to stay home. It's important that you be safe. So together, as each situation arises, we together will talk about the best, the most safe decisions, and we'll come to those conclusions together. But making that flat out statement, I'll never do this, I'll never do that, Mom, I'll never do this, Dad, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and concerns and a regret that you may not be able to mitigate. So again, at each and every turn in this aging journey, together we'll make the best decisions possible. It takes you off the hook a bit, and it's a good answer that hopefully will bring them some peace and ease, as it might be. So just a couple of final thoughts here as we kind of wind down and hopefully get to any questions that you might have. Really encourage you to pace yourself. This aging experience can be a very long journey. Again, without that crystal ball, without a playbook that we're never given, you need to pace yourself. Particularly, and for those of you who are audiences and connected with Del Oro, you know that you're dealing potentially with some cognitive issues. This can be a very long and challenging journey, so pace yourself. I know as an example with my mother, at the close of her life, we had cancer. With cancer, we fought a good battle, we did all the treatment, it resurfaced. We knew we had likely, about 6 months. You can do anything for 6 months. You can throw the kitchen sink at things. When you have a journey that could be 6 months, 6 years, a full decade, you have to pace yourself. The good of one doesn't outweigh the good of many. So you have to make sure that you put your mask on before the mask of those that you're helping. So again, self-care is important, and pacing yourself is critical. Know your limits. Know what you can and cannot tolerate. Divvy out the tasks that are just untenable to you. Find the resource that can support you in that. Know your limits and live within those limits. Finding the boundaries is a critical element. It shows strength, it shows maturity, and it shows wisdom in many ways. Be reminded that knowledge is power. The more knowledge you can acquire, tuck away, and revert back to when needed, the better things will go for you. That promise I can make for you. We never quite know where we're headed, but again, as much knowledge as you can ascertain and acquire is going to make this journey a little easier. Seek support. There is no crime, there is no shame in asking for a little bit of help from time to time, or looking for those formal mechanisms versus the informal mechanisms. Again, another sign of wisdom and brilliance when you know I need some outside support. Breathing is always a good technique. Yesterday, I spent a tremendous amount of time with a very pleasant woman who had just a huge amount of anxiety. And I found myself at times playing into that anxiety and getting anxious with her. And I had to remind myself to breathe, to relax, that I'm a support mechanism for her, and I am of no value if my anxiety levels equal her anxiety levels. So breathing and slowing down just a little bit is a good technique in trying to get yourself through this. And finally, I want you really to realize and to take some comfort in that there is absolutely no right or wrong way to go about things. You try things, you gather your information. The best laid plans sometimes go awry. You regroup and you go back at it. Again, we're human beings. We're not linear. We meander from right to left and up and down. And that's the glory, I think, of being a human being. So please don't mire yourself down in, oh, I didn't do the right thing. There is no right or wrong here. We're all trying our very best, but by pacing yourself, knowing your limits, getting your information and your support systems in place, breathing a bit, taking a moment for yourself, and coming back to solve the concerns and problems, you're going to do the best job that you can for your loved ones. So please don't let yourself get too mired down. I know your love is there, but again, no right or wrong way to do this. You just go about doing the best job you can. We're all human in that regard. So, well, thank you all very, very much for listening to our thoughts and participating in this presentation. It's been my pleasure to be a part of your small part of your journey. And again, I commend you for the education that you're going after and the community that you are seeking to support you as you sit in your situation with your responsibilities and your loved